We'll open up with Dylan from Delaware County.
This is obviously the first recruiting class with NIL factored in. What are your thoughts on the impact NIL is having on recruiting? And is that line between what NIL was meant to be and where it's kind of going right now kind of getting blurred?
I would say so, yeah. I think when you look at our class, first off, I'm very excited about this class. I think that when you combined, first off, the athletic ability and the potential these guys have to be really good football players, that's one thing. But it's also the type of people that we have that are coming into this program, and I'm very excited about this class. I think the quality of the guys, with 17 people, we're going to expect to sign, north of 20 here after the second signing period. But these 17 are as quality as you're going to get, and I think in this time, you have to make sure that you're recruiting great people. We've talked about that before, but to say that I'm not at the very least concerned about what's going on right now across the country, that wouldn't be accurate. There's just a lot with it. But I will say that I think now more than ever, the focus has to be on relationships in this recruiting process.
Over here far right, Clay Hall, WSYX.
Sonny Styles reclassifying, and is he the jewel of the class?
I think we have a bunch of jewels here, but I was certainly very, very excited when Sonny decided he wanted to join us here. It wasn't that long ago, and then quickly let us know that he was interested in reclassifying. And he has a tremendous pedigree, obviously, what his dad did here, and his mom, Laverne, is awesome. And these people love Ohio State. They love football. He's a very serious young man that has tremendous potential, and I think he's going to be a really good football player for us.
Did you bring it up? Did he bring it up?
No, that was him. Yeah.
What kind of motivated him, you think?
I didn't quite ask him, other than the fact that he told me. I went to his basketball game the other day, and they kind of shared with me, his folks, that he always kind of played up. His older brother played, and he just kind of did that growing up, and maybe that's something that motivated him. But that was something that he and his family brought to us, and we're going to support him in that decision.
Right in front, Dom DeBerry, WBNS.
Does this class fill needs, Coach? You like this class, but can some of these guys step in and play right away?
I think that's the thing that in this recruiting world that we're living in right now is that you have to recruit guys that you think can come in and play right away, and that you're going to develop, because we are going to really think long and hard and be deliberate about bringing guys in the transfer portal. We have, and we will continue to look at that, but we also take a lot of pride in developing the guys that are here, and so in order to do that, we have to bring in the right guys. I do think, in particular, we're bringing 4 guys in at wideout because there's a major need there. We brought in some different guys across the board in different areas in the D-line, the offensive line. Certainly getting Devin at quarterback was critical for us. But, yeah, there's always needs, and I think we've hit some of these here. And there's a couple more here in the month of February, and month of January into February that we're going to look to finish up.
You mentioned the transfer portal, the NIL, all that stuff. And being deliberate, what can you guys do as coaches, because you're taking their word when they say they're going to come here? How difficult is that living in this world now?
Well, somebody could say on our team could say that they're coming and leave tomorrow too. So it's just like you said, this is just a start, and it's just a starting point, because we've already had somebody that was supposed to be in this class come and leave. So it's something that we have to be able to adapt to and adjust to, and try to do the best we can along the way to communicate and build those relationships. But it's certainly very, very new, and it's moving very fast.
Fourth row right, Zach Carpenter, 11 Oryx.
Yeah, Ryan, I know you talked about the guys that you love that you brought in, so I know you're very happy with who you got, but was there one position group or 2 position groups where you felt like there needed to be more there, or not that you missed, but that maybe there's more to be had, I guess?
No, I don't think so. No, I think when you look at where we're at right now, we'll probably end up signing 20 plus guys here, I think, when it's all said and done, and there's some more that we may even get in the boat here in the next couple of days. Some other guys that we have communication with that we feel good about going into February. So still a lot to be done here in the next month.
Then Jim Knowles, he does things different schematically and with his system. How do those changes of bringing him in, how does that change or affect the way you evaluate defensive talent at the high school level?
Not really much at all in terms of the structure. Jim will have his own flavor to things and what he sees in talent and those type of things. But schematically, we're looking for the same type of players. Jim certainly didn't have an opportunity to recruit through a whole calendar year with this class right here. But in terms of the 4 down and 2 linebackers and having that kind of outside guy who can play nickel or bringing in a bigger guy against bigger personnel, and then 4 DBs in the game. So kind of a 4-2-5 like we've been working towards.
Bringing him in, was that keeping that structure? Was that a point of emphasis of why you want to bring him in?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Right next door, Pat Murphy, 24/7.
Brian, speaking of Coach Knowles, what can you tell us about that process and bringing him in, and then kind of the situation with your current staff heading into the Rose Bowl? Obviously, someone will have to change roles at least. What's the conversations with the current staff as well?
Yeah, when after we get done with the bowl game, I'll be interested to sit down with you guys and introduce Coach Knowles and do a press conference with him and kind of introduce him the right way. Now is not really the time to get into all that because we want to do a great job in the bowl game, and so he and I have talked about that we're going to visit over the next couple weeks, and then obviously right after the Rose Bowl, and kind of figure out what this is going to look like on the defensive side. But right now, we just, for our guys, the focus needs to be on having a great month of practice here. We only got 2.5 weeks before we play in this game and playing really well against Utah.
You mentioned bringing in Devin, obviously with the quarterback shuffles that have gone on that we've talked to you about. What do you like about him, and what can he bring to this program when he arrives?
First off, you guys can watch the film. His athletic ability, ability to run, ability to throw is tremendous. He did a really good job this past year wherever he's been. The people who worked with him at the Elite 11 have nothing but raving reviews about him. And then when you just talk to him, you just realize what an outgoing personality is. Just has a magnetic way about him. The guys in the class have already grabbed onto him. I was really excited during this process, and he wanted to come to a place where he could compete at a high level, and wasn't really concerned about who else was in the room. Just wanted to go and get after it. So I think when you combine all of those things, we're very, very excited. Devin's a part of this thing and part of our future.
Right next door, Colin Gate, Rivals.
Hey, Ryan, I'm curious about when that transition was made, hiring Jim onto your staff. I'm curious, did that mark any changes in terms of, how did you introduce that idea to recruits and to that idea of transition to the guys that you were trying to secure for the 2022 class?
Yeah, we just talked about, and Jim spoke with a bunch of them, and just anybody who had any questions, he was there for them. But that the structure of what we're going to do isn't going to make a huge difference. But also a lot of those guys, we encourage them to watch the film at Oklahoma State and see how they're doing things and ask questions. But we're going to do the best we can to keep the coaching staff that's in place there now the same. But we're going to have discussions and figure out what's the best moving forward. And that's just kind of how we did it through the process. And I think at the end of the day, the recruits understood that they want to come to Ohio State and be part of this culture. And so I think that the conversations were good, and the guys who spoke with Jim were really excited.
And I wanted to ask about C.J. Hicks. He kind of took the initiative of being that leader to try and bring guys with him to 22. How important was that? How important was that kind of leadership even before he took a snap with you guys?
Yeah, I think when you've had some really good classes of quality people like we have right here of 17 guys, and again, the quality of the guy is as good as there is in the country right here. But a lot of that has to do with CJ. He jumped in this thing early, and he recruited a lot of these guys. He built that relationship, and there were some guys along the way that were good football players, but they just didn't quite fit what Ohio State was all about in our culture. And these guys are able to see them at the camps, at the Rivals events, the opening, all these different things that they go to, and they spend time together. And in that moment, we don't get a chance as coaches to see them. They do. And CJ was a big part of that. His mom, Tiffany, was great. And they really spearheaded this thing. And so he's a big part of this class and a big part of our future.
Deep left, Garrett, left Warriors.
Hey Ryan, regarding Sonny, when specifically did he address you and talk to you guys about reclassifying?
It was right after he committed. I want to say, I forget which game it was. It was a home game. We were over at the Blackwell, and he kind of shared he was going to commit, and then quickly said, we're thinking about reclassifying, and then went about the business of finding out that information.
Because he's so versatile, he's lined up all over the field. Where do you kind of envision him sliding in defensively?
Everywhere. Yeah, we're gonna use him everywhere we can. He can do a lot of things. He can cover. He can blitz. He can play zone. He can play man. He's like a Swiss Army knife out there. So I know, our guys on defense are going to be excited to have him in different roles and as he builds.
Go to far left, Jared Smalley, WCMH.
And a question specifically about NIL. Obviously, at a place like Ohio State, there's great value in that because there's great opportunities out there in the culture around the program. It can work both ways. I'm wondering how you have gone about trying to incorporate NIL in your specific messaging to recruits and how complicated that can be.
It's very complicated, and for I think just the sport itself, I think the concerning part is that, the coaches can't set that up. The coaches, in Ohio State is not allowed to set those type of deals up. That has to come from outside the university. But now, you are counting on and people are influencing these kids who are outside of the university. And I think, again, that's concerning. Sometimes you can look at it and, you can say to yourself, well, what really are the rules here? Other than the fact that the coaches and the school can't set up the deals. That being said, Ohio State and our guys have benefited tremendously from NIL. There's been a lot of opportunities for our guys, and they've really capitalized on that. However, the understanding of something coming in on the front end is something that we cannot be a part of. And so, the integrity of this school and how we do things is going to be important for us, and it always has been.
Second row left, Bill Landis, The Athletic.
Ryan, in the 2019 and 20 classes, I think something like 80% of the guys you signed were in the top 100 were offensive players. In the last 2 years, it's been more or less even, about 50-50 offense, defense. Was that an imbalance there that you guys as a staff felt like you had to address, where maybe your classes were pretty top-heavy with quarterbacks and receivers, and now, especially this class, you're a little more top-heavy with defensive players like linebackers and defensive linemen?
I don't know if we verbalized it like that, but I knew that we've got to recruit the best players in the country at all positions, and so that's a challenge to each of the position coaches to go out there and do a great job of recruiting their position. And so at the end of the day, I challenge those guys as much as I can. Take care of your position, and because nowadays most of the guys, they do position specific recruiting, and certainly during COVID, it was really all position-specific recruiting. Now that we're getting back on the road, guys are starting to get some recruiting areas, but at the end of the day, these guys are responsible for their position, and I'm very much involved with that. I take a lot of pride in building relationships with all these guys and making sure I have my hands on all the recruiting with the families, and it's a big part of what I do. But at the end of the day, each position coach is responsible to take care of their position.
I guess along those lines, I think earlier this year you said something to the effect of you want to have a spot or two maybe most years for a developmental offensive tackle, I guess for lack of a better word. But the last few classes, maybe with the exception of guys like Nick or Paris, do you feel like you have too many of those developmental guys coming in and not enough of the higher level caliber guys like a Nick or a Paris at that position?
I think, we'll kind of see. We'll see as we get into the next year or so. We'll see how these guys have done. If they're able to get on the field here in the next year or so, then we've done a good job. If they haven't, then we swung and missed. But I think the proof will be in the pudding here over the next probably calendar year.
Right next door, Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
Given whatever uncertainty is, especially on the defensive side of the ball with the coaching staff and the conversations you had to have with recruits and how that's going throughout the year and even the last 2 weeks here, do you feel like whatever uncertainty is out there has maybe impacted maybe some of the decisions guys made, whether today or earlier in the year, and just kind of impact, especially in the defensive backs, from a defensive back standpoint? I
don't think so. I think when you look at the guys that we've signed here on defense, it's a good class, and I think, like you said, with some of the little bit of that uncertainty mixed in here in these first 2 weeks of December, to see, for this class that we have signed here today, I think it's really impressive.
Are guys the guys asked just flat out, are certain coaches still going to be here next year?
Yeah. They obviously want to know who's going to be here year in and year out, and the guys that recruit them, they have relationships. Yeah.
And then just switching gears a little bit, with Devin Brown, just with how the Quinn Ewers situation kind of played out here, when was it clear that you guys wanted and needed to add a 2022 quarterback? And can you just kind of give us the timeline of how you guys identified Devin and got it?
Well, like we talk about, we want to bring in a quarterback every year for a lot of reasons, but when Quinn decided to reclassify, we went about the business of trying to find a quarterback in that class, but we weren't going to force it. We had to find somebody that we thought fit, and we looked at a couple different guys, really only about 2 or 3, and Devin stuck out. He just did. I mean, I was sold kind of when I watched his film and then got him on the phone, and then he showed me a video of him windmill dunking, and that kind of put me over the top. I said, "Look at this guy. He's got a tremendous personality, very, very competitive, very gifted, very intelligent, but also very athletic." And excited to just see his energy come into this building here pretty soon.
Front row right, Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, just to follow up on Steven's questions about some of the uncertainty and players maybe asking about who their position coach will be. Ultimately, it seemed like you guys kept the class pretty much intact. Why do you think that was?
I think it's the relationships that are built, and it's the culture. And I think when you look across college football right now, I mean, there's a lot of head coaches that had to move, and so there's just a lot of craziness that's gone on over the last 3 weeks. But one thing's for sure here is that the culture is in place here, and I think the guys understood that. And I'm a big part of the recruiting process. I mean, I'm involved with those guys, and I tell those guys I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that you have what you need to be successful. And part of that is giving you the best position coach you can and the best coordinator you can. And at the end of the day, that's what's important.
What was it like for you being on the road just the last couple of weeks, having not been able to do that last year?
It's been great. It really has been great. I think I really enjoyed going and meeting just the principals, the ADs, going into these young men's home, getting to know their moms and their dads, and just seeing how they grew up, and just learning different things about them. You don't forget the things that you learn when you walk into somebody's house or you walk into their school, and you just hear different stories. I went into a Bennett Christian school, and the principal walked right up to me and told me a story that I'll never forget about Bennett. Those are the things you don't experience when you're on a Zoom call. And I think what a lot of our guys, we had to build the relationships last year over Zoom, and that was a challenge. But it was great to get back on the road and be around these folks.
Third row left, Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Ryan, just to follow up on defensive backs, you had a couple cornerbacks over the course of this cycle who were committed here, and now they've ultimately signed elsewhere. Is that a concern, losing those guys? And does it make you have to look, whether elsewhere in the high school classroom, a transfer portal, with someone to replace them?
We want to have 8 corners on the roster, and so I feel really good about our young corners. I thought we hit a home run last year, and so the room that we have, we'll kind of find out who's going to move on and who's going to stay in terms of the NFL here. But the goal is to have 8, and so if we need to sign one more here into February, we will. If not, we'll have to maybe look at the transfer portal and see. But we have to make sure we have 8 in that room.
And in terms of a Rose Bowl, have you gotten any indication, anybody considering opting out at this point? Or are you still expecting to have a full roster?
Yeah, so there's still some guys kind of figure that out. And, when I have more information on those guys, I'll let you know.
We'll go deep right, Spencer Holbrook, left Warriors. Or Letterman Row, sorry about that.
Ryan, you just said Bennett Christian's name, and I wanted to ask about him. He seems like one of the more underrated guys in this class, kind of forgotten because he committed so early. What do you like from him, and how do you evaluate a tight end that doesn't really get featured in your room, but also does a lot for your offense?
Well, he's well-rounded in a lot of areas as a person, but as a football player, he's strong. I mean, he can do a really good job at the line of scrimmage, blocking the 7 technique, but he also can run routes and get down the field. He's got good versatility that way, and I think some tight ends are developmental just physically. I don't know if he's developmental physically. I mean, he's got to change his body a little bit, but for the most part, I mean, this is a good, big-looking tight end, where a lot of guys come in a little undersized, like 215, 220, and you got to really grow him into the position. He's already kind of there. He's going to have to, put on some more weight as it goes, but now it's just going to be about learning our offense and learning the techniques with Coach Wilson and then we'll get him into this thing. But it'll be quick. I think he's going to assimilate quick. He's very intelligent, and he's been a very solid part of our class, like you said, for a while.
On the other side of the ball, you signed Kaden Curry to shore up that defensive line. To work on getting a commitment from a guy for 18 months, to see it pay off right at the last second, almost 24th hour. What is that like for your coaching staff to know that all of those months of work on one of your very top prospects really just paid off?
Yeah, it was great. I hope I'm not, putting Kaden out there, but he said, Coach, I kind of knew I was going there all along. I said, well, you could have saved us a lot of sleepless nights by just telling us, a little bit sooner than just the other day. But he's a very, very talented young man. He's very, very productive on the field. Comes from a really good program, back-to-back state championships. Comes from a really good family. Tough player. And it's somebody that we had targeted, like you said early on, and a lot of hard work to get him in the boat. But he's going to have a tremendous career here. I think he's very, very excited about the opportunity to come in here and be a Buckeye. But I thought it was everybody involved. Like you said, it wasn't just Larry. Larry had a huge part in it, but it was everybody. And very proud to say that he's part of this class.
Third row, Nathan Barrett, Cleveland.com.
Just kind of wanted to clarify what you were saying before about the NIL situation. Do you think that there are untoward influences happening there? It's not just which programs have maybe set up the best approach to that so far that are capitalizing on that, or do you feel like there's something that is going astray the rules that's happening in this across the country?
Well, no, I don't think there's anything against the rules. I mean, the rules are, the guys can make money NLI outside of the university, and but the deals that are being made really have nothing to do with the university itself. And the coaches and the administrators are not allowed to set those deals up. So, it's kind of out of our hands, which is concerning.
And I guess just to follow up on that, like the recruiting structure that you have here with Mark Pantoni, I mean, it's been tried and true here for a long time. This is obviously a new variable that's been introduced late in this process, so it's kind of a fluid situation. Do you feel like Ohio State has adapted to that well enough, and is Ohio State being aggressive enough in how it's approaching that?
There's only so much Ohio State can do, right? I mean, we're not allowed to set up the deals. So, I think we're doing everything we can to make sure that we provide the structure, the resources that these guys need in order to have what they need to help with the deals. But we're not allowed to set them up. So there's only so much we can do. And so I think that's maybe what my point was earlier. That's out of our hands, and certainly we're not going to get into that because that's not legal, and that's where I think it gets a little messy at times.
But certainly there's a gray area between setting up a deal directly and then, I guess, communication that goes on with your larger booster structure or whatever. Like, what do you feel Ohio State can do in that arena to help facilitate this stuff?
Right. Again,
set the groundwork.
And I think that's where, as we head into the future, that's where I think a lot of this is being sorted through, for sure. But certainly the rules are that we're not allowed to be a part of that.
Second row, right, Austin Ward, Letterman row.
Right, I think a lot of coaches were excited about the early signing date and early signing period when it was instituted, but now maybe we're seeing some unintended consequences with coaching moves and everything else that's gone on the last couple weeks, transfer portal, all that stuff. Do you see it as a problem now where it is, first of all, before I ask what solution you may have to that, or what you'd want to see?
I think we should keep it the way it is now, because I feel like there's been so many changes right now in college football that we don't need any more. And the minute we start changing it again, there'll be unintended consequences again, and there'll be just new things. So I vote for let's not change the signing date right now. Let's try to figure out some other ways to make things better.
So with where it is right now, and you were dealing with players going in the transfer portal, NFL decisions, you were hiring a defensive coordinator. I mean, when are you supposed to balance in this recruiting stuff and being on the road? I mean, how do you sleep? This
right.
Seems difficult to me.
Well, it's part of the job. It's part of the job, and no one said it's easy, but that's what it is. And I think one of the biggest challenges right now is the unknown. I think for a long time, you knew what the rules were, you knew what to expect. Right now, you feel like things are changing on a daily basis, and you have to stay out in front of it the best you can. I think that's probably the most unnerving thing right now for all of us.
Right behind him, Jeremy Birmingham, letterman row.
Ryan, the numbers on the defensive line seem to change over and over in the last 16 months, whether it was who you guys thought were going to go to the NFL, super senior
Right.
problems, all that kind of stuff. And now there's 2 guys signed in that position group right now. How important is it for you to round that out as you head into February to get in, 2 or 3 more in that group?
Yep, it's important. Got to get it done. I mean, it will get done one way or another. We're going to find somebody to fit in those roles because we have to. We got to have 8 defensive tackles and 8 defensive ends. That's the goal. So, we got to do it, and we feel really good about a couple of them.
On a guy like Kaden Curry who can play inside or outside, I know you've recruited him a long time, but when you look at his productivity, his talent, and then you see some of the rankings out there on him, and I know you guys don't care about rankings per se, but you look at them. Are you kind of surprised at the lack of national accolades for a kid like that? Because what makes him that guy for you? I mean, why has he been that guy for you guys for so long?
Well, first off, Caden's never been a guy that's gone onto a lot of these camps and tried to go and gather offers and try to grab stars. That's never been his deal. And his deal is just go win a state championship and be the best player he can possibly be. He played a lot of baseball and is a really good baseball player, so he missed out on a lot of those things, which I don't think he'd have it any other way. But I also think, he's very, very talented. I spoke with somebody not far back who actually went to his game. He's in NFL personnel, and he texted me right away, who is this Kaden Curry? And he said, this guy's going to be an NFL player here in about 3 years. And he goes, doesn't take long to figure that one out, I mean, when you watch him play, you just see him jump off the screen. And in a day and age where it's a lot about the stars and about going to these camps and getting certain ratings, I don't think Kaden was concerned about that. I think all he cared about was his teammates playing really at a high level, winning a state championship, and now coming to Ohio State and being the best football player he could be.
Was it for him to make the decision to be here in 3 weeks as opposed to 6 months from now?
Yeah, it was hard. I know he wanted to play baseball, and that was a tough decision for him. But it was big for him. It's going to be big for him to get here. He's a Midwest guy, and I just think getting to work and getting to work with Larry and getting in the room with the weight room with Mick, those are all going to be opportunities for him to get on the field quickly next September.
Do you have an idea of exactly how many guys you're looking at for the January enrollment?
It moves a little bit. I want to say we're targeting about 12 or 13. I think maybe 1 or 2 of those would possibly be a transfer portal. We're still considering a couple guys in that area. So I think we're right in that 12 to 13 range.
We'll go far left, third row, Steve Hellwagon, 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, Coach, just curious with Coach Knowles, will he be physically in the building, watching practice and watching the guys work behind the scenes? Can he add anything behind the scenes on how you guys can beat Utah?
No, we're going to kind of start fresh on the 2nd. He is going to come for a couple days and just kind of get a lay of the land, meet with a few folks. I don't think it's the right thing to do to have him out of practice. I just think that, our staff is intact right now, and we're going to do a great job playing in the Rose Bowl. And but yeah, get him here for a couple days, just kind of, get the lay of the land, and then we'll start fresh in the 2nd.
I want to ask about a couple guys. This seemed like a year unlike any other where a guy would play 1 week, miss 3 weeks, play 2 weeks, miss 3 weeks. It was just kind of the weirdest, I don't know from your standpoint how it was, but Master T, 20 carries against Michigan State and doesn't even play or doesn't even go to Michigan. Tyleek Williams started midseason, didn't play a whole lot after that. Just, I don't know, individually, if you have anything to say about those 2 guys in particular, and then just from your standpoint, was this a difficult year knowing from 1 week to the next who you could count on? Because it just seemed like when he puts the list out, you're like, he played last week, why is he on this list this week?
Yeah, well, some guys, fought injuries all year. We did lose some guys for the season, but some other guys who just fought injuries throughout the season. And it's very hard to play on Saturdays if you're not practicing during the week. And certainly some guys did a really good job of taking care of their bodies. Some guys, unfortunately, had some things that happened to them, and that's part of the game. You try to work through it. Other guys, we played some young guys early on, and then certainly found our way as the season went on, and a lot of that had to do with the depth chart and how that kind of trickled throughout the season. But I think it's a combination of those 2 things.
Master, do you feel like he'll be able to play for us?
I do, yep.
We've got time for just a couple more, folks. I didn't realize that the defense is going to be in here at 1:45. So the second row right, Tim May, Columbus Dispatch, or
jack of all trades.
I don't think they'll be here today on 145.
Okay.
Just check on that. I think that'll be a couple days, maybe tomorrow.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah, I think it's tomorrow.
Am I still a go?
You're a go.
Was anything said during the Heisman Trophy ceremony show that bothered you as you left there, that you thought was untoward, et cetera?
You know, I was happy that CJ was able to, you'll get that experience because, you know, you just never know. I mean, hopefully he has an opportunity to get back there next year, but you just never know. And, you know, what a great opportunity for him and his family to spend a weekend in New York City, and certainly have a lot of respect for the tradition of that ceremony and all the great people that have come before and the professionalism of that event. And so, you know, I was honored to go back there this year.
Comment on the other part that I asked. I mean,
yeah, I mean, like I said, I have so much respect for that award.
yeah. When I ask you this almost every year, but I'm going to ask it another way. When you're signing a quarterback, is there a moment that you just, you know, during that process where you just feel like, yeah, this is the guy, almost like a gut feel? And with Devin Brown, when did that moment come? Like you talked about watching him, you know, hearing him talk and stuff. And like when I was talking to him the other day, you know, he didn't care about who's in the quarterback room. He just wants a seat in that room. Just what was that gut moment though with him? Because it is so critical.
Yeah, I think like you said, you kind of have that with each of the guys. And I can kind of remember with CJ, I can remember with Kyle when he was out here throwing for us one time. And I think it was Devin when I got a chance to meet him. Certainly the film speaks for itself and all the people that have worked for him. But when you sit in a room with him and you look him in the eye and you listen to him talk and you just hear him talk about football and talk about competing and those type of things, that was my moment.
With Kaden, for example, when you guys are looking for a guy to play up front on the defense, are you looking as much a little bit for a nasty streak in a guy too? I mean, what just has to jump off at you just besides him making plays?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things, but Kaden definitely has that, and that toughness and that edge to him is something that's a must, and he has it. And I'm excited that he's going to be getting here and kind of getting to work on that stuff. But he also has tremendous twitch, and like you said, makes a lot of plays and runs to the ball. I think his motor is what's the most special about Kaden Curry. He runs sideline to sideline. You watch his highlight film, you just see how hard he plays every play, and that's something for us that we recognized early.
And in that same vein, Jim Knowles, what is it about? I mean, I know you don't want to talk a lot about him right now, but what is it about his defenses in particular? Is it their creativity? I mean, just explain what just really attracted you to him.
Well, it was all the above. I mean, I think when you're coming in to be the defensive coordinator at Ohio State, and again, we'll talk about this more, but, you have to check all the boxes. It's not just one. But I think, his past and what he's done, when you watch the guys who have played for him, what they've done schematically, how they speak of him, former coaches that have worked with him, that he's worked for, you add up all of those things and you look at the production, it all speaks for itself. And again, we'll get into more of that as we get to that press conference.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
Right behind him, Doug Lamberese, Cleveland.com.
Sometimes on this day we talk a lot about the 85 and roster management, but with the extra COVID year and the transfer portal, what is roster management and number management like these days?
Boy, what a question that is. I mean, to say it's a moving target would be like, yeah, no kidding. It's unlike anything that's happened before, I think, in college sports where someone can come into your program and just walk in the next day and say, Coach, I'm going somewhere else. So how do you forecast that? You don't. You just try to come up with contingency plans in place and continue to recruit and do the best you can to have those plans in place for if something were to happen. I just think about, high school sports, and if somebody were to transfer, they have to sit out for a year or so. You think about the NFL, someone signs a contract, they're not allowed to just change teams whenever they want to, but they can in college football right now. And that obviously has a lot of ramifications. And so as we move into the future, we have to do a great job of coming up with those plans for when this happens, what are we going to do? And that's part of the process of getting to that 85.
What are you? You're at whatever it is, 18 right now, and you said you'll get over 20. Are you saving spots for portal guys?
Like, is that, where does the?
I don't even think you save them anymore because you don't know what you have. So if somebody, I think the best way that I can verbalize it is we have a certain number at each position, like I was mentioning. You know, we need 8 defensive tackles, we need 8 defensive ends, we need 8 corners. We'd like to have 4 quarterbacks. And so at each of those positions, by the time we get to preseason camp, well, those numbers have to be right. We have to be whole. So what we do is we try to identify, who those people are. And I think for us here at Ohio State, it's critically important to know that we're going to look to bring in guys in high school and develop them at a high level, show them loyalty when they put work into the program, and then develop them to get on the field. I think it's dangerous to live in the portal world. I don't think it's sustainable for the chemistry and culture of your team to be doing that. So if we do bring in somebody, it has to be deliberate. We have to think it all the way through. And it has to be the right fit at the right time. And I think when we've brought guys in, it's been the right way. I think when Justin came in, when Trey Sermon came in, when Jonah Jackson came in, when Noah Ruggles came in, I mean, those were home runs for us. And we're going to continue to really think that all the way through before we just flippantly add guys into the roster.
Keeping track of the numbers that you're saying, would you be in a headspace to give us your ideal number count at every position? When you're built, so 8 defensive ends, 8 defensive tackles, 8 corners. With this defense you're running now, how many linebackers ideally do you have?
I think that's something that actually, it's funny you say that. Over the next week, I was going to sit down with Jim and figure out what he worked, when he was at Oklahoma State. In the past, we had been at 4 bullets, 7 safeties, and I believe 8 linebackers, 7 or 8 linebackers. And that changed when we kind of made the 4-2-5 change. And so I'll sit down with him and figure out if he wants to maybe, move a couple of those numbers here or there.
4 quarterbacks. How many running backs?
We're usually in 5. I think we're 11 at wide receiver, 5 at tight end, and then I think we're at 16 in the O-line. But in the off season every year, we'll go through and see if we need to change that based on our personnel or what we're trying to do schematically year in and year out.
And I'll ask one more question that's not related to that. Your name was in headline about the NFL this past week. Does that come up in recruiting at all with you? And I know it might be a strange thing to talk about, but we know you're an offensive play caller. We know you've been in the NFL. Sometimes with all this crazy college stuff, sometimes like, man, college is so crazy right now, maybe a guy just would want to go to the NFL. We don't have to deal with all this stuff. Is there anything you want to address when your name is in a headline with NFL rumors?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just tell you what I told the recruits if any of it ever came up is there's nothing to that. There's no truth to it. And the second thing is I love Ohio State, and I love being the head coach at Ohio State.
5th row middle, Andrew Lind, Buckeyes Now and Sports Illustrated.
He's maybe not as maybe as high as a rating as other running backs in the country, but Dallin Hayden was somebody who you guys identified really early on. What was it about him that just made him that guy for you guys?
Yeah, Dallin from the jump was somebody we recognized as a very talented running back. We're really proud of how he played this year. He had one game in particular that was one of the better games I've seen a running back play in a long time. Runs really hard, has great versatility, and comes from great pedigree. His family are great people, understand football. They're football people. And so that's a guy that we want to invest in our future in the running back position. So he comes in with a tremendous work ethic. Again, really great background, understands football, understands this environment. So we think he's going to hit the ground running. He's going to have a really bright future here.
You guys signed 4 different wide receivers in this cycle. They're obviously all on different paths. I know Gray's came from being an unheralded prospect to now maybe one of the more noteworthy ones, while Caleb was a 5-star at one point. How do you kind of convince all of them to come in at the same time?
Yeah, I think they're all different. Both Caleb's and Keon and Kojo have different skill sets. But I also think they see our numbers at the wide receiver position. They also see that we had 3 guys catch a bunch of balls last year, and they like this offense. They want to be a part of this offense. They've shared with me that they want to come compete and be the best. Because we say if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And I think that's part of this recruiting process nowadays. In a world where you can just leave whenever you want. You have to make sure that they want to be here. Over other days of talking, and I kind of knew this, I can kind of see it coming a year or two ago. You don't just talk somebody into coming to your school anymore. You tell them all the reasons why, but they have to want to be here. And then when those bad days come, those tough days come, and someone back home or someone's telling them, you need to go transfer to this school, they say, no, I got this. I chose this school for a reason. I chose this school. So no one talked me into coming here. Because when that happens, they just knock on the door and say, Coach, I'm going to enter the portal. And then what do? All the time that you had, all the investment that you made in that person, you think about all the time and energy and resources that we spend on recruiting and on one individual family for them to walk out the door. I mean, that's a bad day no matter how it works. And so it's going on across the country. It's part of the world we live in, so we're going to have to adapt. But I think that's the thing with those 4 receivers. They want to be here. They're highly competitive, and they like what we're doing.
And specifically Kojo, I know, when he was going through the recruiting process, his family, placed a lot of emphasis on academics and those kind of things. Can you talk about maybe the challenges of recruiting the parents as well in those situations?
Yeah, I mean, we recruit the parents just as much as we recruit the young man because now more than ever the parents are involved. They just are. And his family, academics were very, very important, and that was something that the whole family was involved in that decision. They all sat down together, they gave their input, and then Coach ultimately made the decision. But a big part of it was the academics.
And we're going to wrap it up over here with Clay Hall once again, WSYS.
One of our affiliates wanted to comment on Avery Henry. Can you, what do you think of him, how it went, how you got him?
Yep. So St. Clairsville, Ohio, kind of a late bloomer, lost a ton of weight going into his senior year, and just really did a great job. Our coaches went out there and watched him. Certainly saw his film and was excited about that, and then went out and watched him play and just came back with raving reviews. And he comes from a really good family, great people in St. Clairsville. They're very, very proud that he's going to be a Buckeye. And, we're counting on his toughness, to show up in that O-line room. But a lot of talent there, and I know he's going to come in and work really hard.
Does your comment mean you're coaching the 2022 Buckeyes?
Yeah, I hope so.
Actually, I left an individual out, second row middle, Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
I'm glad you think I still exist, Jerry. Appreciate it. Actually, I've got I don't know where to start a bunch of them, but let me start with this. The Rose Bowl preparation. Obviously, you want to win this game, but it's not a playoff game. You probably are looking to the future with some of this stuff. How are you going to balance that, the desire to win, and development, especially in the pregame, in the practice?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It isn't the CFP, but it is the Rose Bowl, and the Rose Bowl matters, and that's been the message. And our guys get that. We've had some really good practices. I think we're into practice 4 or 5 now. We're going to practice throughout the weekend, and then we're going to give them, after the practice on the 22nd, we're going to let them go home for Christmas, and then we'll meet out in LA on the 26th and have a really good week of practice out there, which is how we've done the bowl games in the past. They've, coming off that last game, there was, a lot of pain and a lot of urgency to get back on the field and practice, and practices have been physical. They've been tough. The guys, there's paint chips flying off the helmets, and that's a good thing. And I think that's how we want to go play in this game. We want to win this Rose Bowl. There's a highly motivated team, a very good team, and our guys understand that. They got a lot of pride in themselves, and they got a lot of pride in Ohio State. So, our goal, like you said, is to develop the young players, but we want to win this game.
And it's probably got to be awkward for your assistant coaches who may or may not know if they're going to come back. I know you're not going to share with us, have you told each of them whether they're coming back or not, or what roles they're going to have? Yeah,
we talk every day, and we have conversations about all those types of things, yeah.
How's that been? And specifically, every year I think we hear rumors of Larry Johnson possibly retiring. Can you address that?
Yeah, every year, like you said, there's always going to be stuff. If we do well, then the opportunities are going to be all over the place for our guys. If we don't do well, then there's going to be situations where guys are concerned with losing their jobs. It's just kind of the way of the world. Not that I agree with it, but that's just the way it is. And so this year is unlike any other year. There'll be things that come up, and we'll just try to adapt with them as we go. But right now, I know our whole staff is just focused on this Rose Bowl.
And you lost, oh my God, I'm losing the cornerback from Texas, whose name escapes me, Terrence Brooks. No, Terrence Brooks. Today, how much of a surprise was that he flipped?
Very disappointing, for sure. In the conversations we had leading up to it, there wasn't any conversation that this would happen like this. So it caught us off guard for sure.
Great. Coach, thank you very much.
Thanks.